The NFL draft is in the books. 81 fantasy relevant players were selected, but who can we rely on for fantasy football? We're going to start having a look at the quarterbacks today. And Rich, it was no surprise who went the 101. It was obviously Fernando Mendoza, as I think we might have mentioned since the end of the season a few times. Mendoza landing in that spot where, from what we've heard, is going to be sitting behind Cousins. From what we heard from the Raiders, that's going to be the case. From what we heard about Brady, that's going to be the case. From what we heard about Tom Brady talking about how he views rookie quarterbacks in general and his experience coming to the table there. I've heard some people saying he's only going to be sitting for kind of a couple of games, 6 maybe max. I think that may be longer. What are your thoughts with Mendoza landing where we expected, but behind Captain Kirk?
I think he'll be starting by mid-season. Like we do this dance every year of rookie. They're not going to start. They're not going to, we're going to sit him for the whole year. The only quarterback in the last, I think it's 21 seasons that has not played a game in his rookie season is JJ McCarthy, and that was through injury. That's top 10 quarterbacks don't sit. Like it just doesn't happen. Yeah, they can talk about Kirk Cousins and stuff like that. As soon as the Raiders are out of playoff contention, they'll be moving towards Mendoza. I don't expect the Raiders to be a playoff team this year with Kirk Cousins under center. So I think, obviously it's pending where their bye week is. But if Mendoza's not starting by week 8, week 9, week 10, I'd be absolutely gobsmacked.
I think a player that we are absolutely certain is far more likely to be sitting throughout a good chunk of this season, if not all of it, and maybe a little bit further, will be Ty Simpson, though, coming off the board at 13 to the Rams. I mean, for Ty Simpson, that is an unbelievable landing spot. It's a great situation for him, knowing he was unlikely to be starting straight away anyway. Far too costly a draft price. I think there's been a lot spoken about that over the weekend. McVay's reaction didn't help. He's kind of tiptoed back on that. Competition for Stetson Bennett, not the greatest compliment you want. But the landing spot, looking at where Stafford is for his career, does this give us a bit more confidence for if we're picking up Ty Simpson and stashing him on our taxi squads for a bit? Or are you uncertain?
Look, any time Sean McVay puts his, hat on or neck on the line and grabs a quarterback, I'm interested because the guy's a football genius. But I don't understand why you draft Ty Simpson to sit him. This is a guy who spent 4 years in college and started 1. He's going to sit at least 1 year, potentially 2. There was some talk about a Matthew Stafford extension. I mean, he's got a $33.6 million dead cap hit in 2027, even if he's not on the Rams. So I do wonder if we're going to see a Stafford extension. That means we could potentially have Ty Simpson starting 15 games in a 6-year span. Like, that's insane. That's absolutely bonkers that you're expecting that guy. I would I'd be much happier with a guy like, everyone compares Patrick Mahomes and Jordyn Love and stuff like that. Those were incredibly toolsy guys that have got these elite arm talent, natural athleticism that needed some, rounding to their games. Ty Simpson isn't that. He's pigeonholed as, an intellectual, highly accurate guy that doesn't have those natural tools. So I don't know how much you're going to add by sitting him. So it's a very weird draft pick. For fantasy, this is a bad draft class, isn't it? Like, yeah, you're probably going to end up taking him 108, 109, something like that, just because he's a quarterback. He's going to start eventually. But yeah, I don't have a huge amount of confidence. I don't have a huge amount of belief that he's going to be an NFL star or a fantasy star at that.
Cue Matt Stafford getting injured about week 3 and everyone starts scrambling for their Ty Simpson shares. But that's the reality, is it? We're hoping something to go wrong for Stafford rather than something going right for Simpson here, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Matthew Stafford has had plenty of injuries. There's been plenty of talk about his back and all that kind of stuff. Matthew Stafford wants to play. Matthew Stafford plays through a hell of a lot of injuries. And if I'm betting on somebody wanting to prove everybody that he's still got it, Stafford's coming off an MVP season. He's going to want to push for that title. So it's going to take a serious injury for him to get off the field. This is a guy that's played through, broken backs and all sorts.
Last time you joined us, we spoke about your favourite QB sleeper. It doesn't make anyone more of a sleeper than being the last quarterback to go off the board and draft. And then he's landed in a brilliant situation behind one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So Garrett Nussmeier's route to start him, what does that look like?
Well, there isn't one, is there? Like, Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere. They're not going to start in week 1 if Patrick Mahomes isn't healthy. But yeah, look, this is a nice landing spot for him to potentially learn, to potentially develop. Yeah. But we're talking 4 years down the road that he might get a starting job, because he's never going to get them. I appreciate you bringing him up and just twisting that knife in a little bit. But a lot of the reports and rumors over the weekend were that he came across pretty arrogant. He did really badly at his interviews. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned, and I think sadly he's a player you should probably not bother rostering ever again.
That's often what we hear, especially with quarterbacks. I mean, Jadarian Price was an entirely different kettle of fish last year, but when a player starts to drop, it's because they've not passed the attitude test rather than any athletic test at the combine, isn't it?
Yeah, and particularly with backup quarterbacks, the big thing is, Chase Daniel was a backup quarterback in the league for however many years because he was a great hang, and that's what you've got to be. You've got to be a good hang. You've got to be a good, competent backup. And it sounds like Garrett Nussmeier's not going to be that.
Looking just a couple of the names on there then. So Taylor Green, let's have another quarterback in Cleveland. Why not? Dylan Gabriel possibly might spend the infant, although he seems to have given up already by sounds of it, not reporting to do anything. Who'd have thought Shedeur Sanders will be the model professional in the Cleveland quarterback room? Carson Beck, he'll be hoping maybe Malik Willis isn't the real deal and will get a shot at some point. And Drew Aller will be waiting to hear what Rodgers has planned for 2026, as we all will be, until he inevitably says that he was going to stay all along. But let's talk about rookies rather than how much Aaron Rodgers likes to play the carousel of the media circus. If you are not already so far, please do consider giving us a subscribe, a like, and a share. We have got rookie content for next week to look at some mock drafts and then looking ahead to next season as well, with lots of different things through the off season. Running backs, Jeremiyah Love. I heard some people talking how surprised they were that he went third to cards, but that seems to be quite a poorly kept secret as we approach draft week anyway. My biggest worry for Jeremiyah Love at the Cardinals is that I was hoping we were finally out of the situation where Tyler Algier was a fancy gremlin and stealing that work to take away all of our points from Bijan Robinson at points last year. Is he going to be gremlin territory for Jeremiyah Love, or will Love be able to do what Bijan couldn't and keep Algier off the field? Surely they're both going to see some time, especially early season, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Algier is the perfect complement to Love in that, Love is a more agile back. Love is, a home run hitter. He can still carry the ball between tackles, as you're seeing on screen there, but he is that more satellite type back, and he's going to be amazing in the passing game. Well, Algier is going to, do the bulk of the carries between the 20s, maybe get a little bit of work in and around the goal line. But I think as a community, we spend too much time lumping draft capital and landing spot as the same thing. To me, Jeremiyah Love getting the third overall pick, that's incredible draft capital. That's amazing for, things like my rookie model. It helps him pop and stuff like that. But actually, this is a really bad landing spot because he's got significant competition for touches. James Conner's not going anywhere. They've got Tyler Algier, as you said. That's going to, impact the volume he sees. But also, this offensive line is abysmal. The quarterback, well, if it's Jacoby Brissett, he's not a check down Charlie. He's going to be pushing the ball downfield. If it's Carson Beck, then it's going to be a bad offense. So, yes, it's great to see him get top 3 draft capital. That's incredible. But for fantasy, this is a relatively bad landing spot because I don't see the pluses, quite frankly.
I believe it was Travis that once said, "Love will come through," and I'm certainly hoping that will be the case for Jeremiyah. But is there enough of worry there for him not to be your 101 in most formats for Dynasty? Or is there a little bit of doubt there now?
So he's not been my 101 in Superflex formats this entire process. Since mid-February, I've been firmly quarterback value is king. So I would take Mendoza over him in Superflex formats. In one QB formats, let's not be silly. Jeremiyah Love is still the 101, and he's still like an elite prospect. I love Love. Sound like Brick Tamplin there. I think he's superb. He's an elite prospect. He very much is that Bijan Saquon tier as a prospect. I just think that in the short term, this is not a good landing spot. And I'm the person that says landing spot is relevant. Landing spot doesn't matter. I don't count landing spot in my evaluation and my valuation of prospects. But I do think we need to just understand that he's probably in the split work early. This is going to be a bad offensive line. This is going to be a bad offense if Carson Beck is under center. That doesn't spell fantasy success for Jeremiyah Love in the short term.
Speaking of landing spot, I'd been quite confident that whoever the Seahawks decided to draft at 32, I would elevate in this rookie class to be my RB2. And it's a man who's used to be in the RB2 alongside Love. It is Jadarian Price. I'm considering Walker and Charbonnet were almost as close to a bang-on 50-50 in every possible way last year for Seattle. Is Price going to find himself in that same situation, or is it a different beast that Charbonnet is going to be dealing with this time around?
Well, I think the issue is that Charbonnet is not healthy. Like, obviously, he had that horrendous injury. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't play it down in 2026. So, it's probably not going to be a 50-50 split in the backfield this year. I think there's going to be a back that gets some of the passing work. Jadarian Price didn't see 15 targets in his entire college career. He hasn't proved that he can be a passing downs back. He hasn't proved in pass protection. So there's going to be someone else that shares this backfield with him, whether that's George Halani or, who knows. But I'd be shocked if Zach Charbonnet is anything until mid-season at the very earliest.
The reason we really like getting you on the think tank is to tap into your deep knowledge of the rookies, especially. So I'll be honest, Kaelon Black is not a player I was expecting to go off as the third running back in the draft. Lands straight into perceived fancy relevance, being a 49ers running back. Any running back of the 49ers can have a big week any given time. And I don't think there's any team that seems to operate next one up so gracefully as San Francisco as well. But the list of running backs drafted round 3 and 4 by the 49ers last 10 years. Joe Williams, Trey Sermon, Tyrion Davis-Price, Isaac Grendo, Jordan James. It's not the best company for Black to be in, is it?
No, and this is, the Shanahan once every other year he goes and grabs a running back, doesn't he? Look, Black he's what I call a ham and egger, in that he will get you exactly what he's blocked. He's like, if you think of Frank Gore, the last few years of his career, he had like an insane amount of carries for positive yard. Like he had the lowest percentage of carries that went for negative yards. I think it was 3 years in the trot to end his career. And that's what Kaelon Black is. Like, he will get positive yards. He will get exactly what is blocked. He won't add much on top of that. He's not a natural pass catcher. I have some issues with his vision. I think there's some times where he misses cutback lanes and stuff. But you give him volume, he can be fantasy relevant. And this is an offense where we have seen Kyle Shanahan produce fantasy stardom out of nothing. Like, Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, like Alfred Morris up in Washington. Like there's been some phenomenal fantasy seasons from some very average guys. And Kaelon Black is, I don't love him. I don't think he's great. But in this offense, if he gets volume, he's going to be a fantasy star. The issue is that he's got Christian McCaffrey ahead of him. I don't expect him to see any work if Christian McCaffrey is healthy. But if there's a world where Christian McCaffrey gets injured, misses time, Kaelon Black could absolutely be a league winner in this offense. And, yeah, I don't like the player. I don't understand the draft pick from the 49ers, particularly given the volume of other backs on the board. But at some point, the value is impressive, and I'm quite happy to scoop up Kaelon Black in rookie drafts because he's one injury away from being a very useful fantasy asset.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're looking at the taking the RB2s on the team, he's going to tick that box perfectly. I think at the minute we're at a time where all is forgiven with CMC. Everyone was out on him last year. He's put a big season. All is forgiven again. He's one CMC injury from everyone grasping for him and being a huge waiver wire pick, especially in redraft. A player I really, really enjoyed watching in the offseason was Emmett Johnson. I feel like in the fantasy community, we've been wanting the Chiefs to trade for a solid running back so we could see that real value in Kansas from a running back. We've been desperate to, after missing previously, to dip back in to the draft and pick up a running back. They've done both this offseason, picking up Walker and now Emmett Johnson as well. The Chiefs have only ever had a top 12 running back, though, once in the Mahomes era, and that was Kareem Hunt as the RB12 in 2018. It's Walker's backfield. We know that. We spoke about what looked brilliant for Emmett Johnson in the offseason, but also where those weaknesses lie. How good a spot is this for Johnson, and what does it do to his fantasy value?
I think it's an okay spot for him. I would have much preferred to see an earlier draft capital, sitting on the board until the 5th round. It doesn't exactly scream fancy relevancy. I think it could be an interesting role for him early season because I think Mahomes is going to be pretty immobile in the pocket if he does start early. I think we're going to see him look to get rid of the ball very quickly, and that could benefit Emmett Johnson. But for me, the bigger fantasy impact of Emmett Johnson being drafted is on Kenneth Walker because we saw in Seattle, Kenneth Walker wasn't trusted in the pass game. He was hardly used in the pass game, but he was never used in pass protection. And that's part of the reason why Zach Charbonnet was on the field so often, was that they wanted him in pass protection. Well, if you can't pass protect, you're not staying on the field with Patrick Mahomes under center because that is the franchise. That is the most important player. So this could be a significant ding to Kenneth Walker. We all hoped he was going to see 80% opportunity share in that offense. If Emmett Johnson is going to see the passing down work, which he likely will because that's his specialism, that could really ding Kenneth Walker's fantasy value. And it takes him from being, a mid RB1 potentially to someone that falls down into that sort of RB2 role. And then fantasy managers are going to be screaming at their TVs on a Sunday, give Kenneth Walker more carries, give Kenneth Walker more touches. And that's the reason why.
I do feel there's a lot of situations when we look through some of the landing spots from a fantasy point of view, rather than getting some nice fancy assets draft, we've got problems scattered across, and that's going to kind of creep when we look at some wide receivers as well. But let's just have a quick look at a few more running backs first. So Coleman's Denver. I like it makes it really hard to decide where you're going to draft Coleman, Dobbins, Harvey. So that's quite a murky situation there. Mike Washington, is he going to be unstartable when he's going to be RB2 to Genty? Chalk him up for fancy gremlin territory as well. I'm sure he will take some work away from Genty at key times when we could have had 6 clear points for Genty. I think then the biggest question from the think tank throughout this offseason now, though, is going to be how much Randall can you handle? I spoke about Adam Randall a lot before the draft. It's only going to get worse now that he has arrived at the Ravens. Now, I'm not going to get too carried away. It's still behind Justice Hill. Obviously, he's not going to be ousting Derrick Henry, but he's absolutely going to be a sort of player that I can see is scrambling over after a big week. I'm going to go week 7. We'll have a really fancy, relevant week out of nowhere. We'll be scrambling for the waiver wire to pick him up, and then we'll see nothing for week 8, 9, 10, 11. And then maybe pop up again. But a versatile back in the Ravens offense, this is a player that is surely at the very worst this year going to be a nice best ball asset to have deeper in your drafts, isn't he?
As long as he can supplant Justice Hill, like you've seen over the last couple of years, Justice Hill has been really fantasy relevant at times. But the problem is he's been so game script dependent in terms of when the Ravens are up, it's Derrick Henry. When the Ravens are down, it's been Justice Hill. And that's not always been that easy to predict. So, yeah, I really like Adam Randall as a prospect. I really like him as a dart throw. And I'm very hopeful that he could be awesome in this offense if he gets the work that we know he could get. But he needs to usurp Justice Hill. He needs to take over that role. And if he does, then, yeah, I'm going to have as many Bestball shares as I can because he's an explosive athlete. He is a big guy, and he's going to see plenty of passing volume. So I'm excited, but I just need to temper that expectation because Justice Hill's still very much sat there at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's going to oust Ali relatively easily. Obviously, Keaton Mitchell out the door as well. But just, yeah, what a man mountain. What a guy to have on the Ravens. I'm so excited. As far as my guys go, I'm done for the off season so far. It's clearly me Adam Randall for the whole time. And I say, if he doesn't do a great deal, I'll just stop talking about him mid-season, pretend I never mentioned him. Wide receivers, not any huge surprises really early on. Obviously, Tate went early as we expected. Titans maybe not the spot we were all hoping for. Makai Lemon's landed in a cloudy situation. So quite a few wide receivers to talk about. Let's start at the top though. Let's start with Carnell Tate. And when we're looking at Tate landing at the Titans, I think we said before, his production we couldn't quibble with too much. He was sharing targets with next year's potential 101 in Jeremiah Smith in Ohio. But there's a route to him being a volume machine this year now, isn't there? So 120-ish targets, not out of the question, 7-ish touchdowns. That could happen as well. I think the problem we've got is his success is going to be exponentially linked to Cam Ward and what he can do kicking on this year as well. But if he can push the ball down the field, Tate will prosper. And I say, when you're looking for who you're going to gamble on at wide receiver, the volume is king, and he's got a route to that crown, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that Tate was going to settle in as kind of a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, a wide receiver 2/3 for fantasy, be in that every week frustration, but by the season end, he kind of settles in. But actually, I think now he's landed with the Titans, he's going to see so much volume in this offense, as you said, that he's probably going to be reliable week to week. I don't know if the ceiling's going to be there. I don't think he's going to have that crazy high touchdown number. I don't think this offense is going to be good enough to kind of bevy that. But he should be in a position where you can count on, 5 to 7 targets every single week. In your PPR leagues, he ticks a nice box, getting double-digit points most weeks, and he finishes the season in a good place. So, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm a big Cam Ward believer. I think he is very talented. I think he is very good. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that Tate should be good.
As we move to the Saints then, the fact that Jordyn Tyson was drafted so highly should hopefully give us a little bit of comfort around the injury concerns for Tyson that we spoke about pre-draft, or maybe the Saints just have a little soft spot for often injured wide receivers with Chris Olave being in there as well. Jordyn Tyson you expect him to be able to settle in as the 2. Does he have a route to surpassing Olave given time? Is Jordyn Tyson taking a hit with that landing spot? For me, I think he's still the clear wide receiver 2, especially when we look where Lemon has landed. I just think that I said it. I'd have liked different spots. The one thing I think Jordyn Tyson landing with the Saints, really the key winner here is Tyler Shough has had an absolute dream of an offseason so far with Travis Etienne coming in as well. The fact that Tyson's there and Olave, he's got the world at his feet. What are your thoughts for Tyson? I think I'm still quite happy in the thing to say drafted as highly as he is. The injury was coming there, could still be a route to 100 targets potentially this year.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson's been my rookie wide receiver 1 throughout this whole process. I love him as a route runner. I love him as an overall player, and my rookie model loves him as well. I think we can get into semantics debating wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, who's got the higher ceiling. It doesn't matter. I think this offense is going to be explosive. I love the scheme. I love the play caller. And I think that Jordyn Tyson's going to see a decent bevy of downfield targets. He's been a good touchdown guy, 18 touchdowns across his last 2 years. We've seen his ADOT's always been over 11.5. Like, he is a downfield weapon. I think Tyler Shuck showed last year that he can push the ball downfield. So I'm really excited about this whole offense. I think it's going to be phenomenal. And I want pieces of this. I don't think it's going to be, top 5 NFL offense, but I think for fantasy, this could be really, really dynamic.
Considering how putrid it felt at times last year, it's definitely a different situation, isn't it? I'm really happy I've got so many Tyler Shuck shares in Dynasty as well coming into the year. A big tick in the box for Tyson as well is that character that we've seen in the build-up to the draft and throughout as well. A little bit different for our next gentleman, Mr. Makai Lemon. Old snake hips himself when it comes to his interviews. He's landed in quite a crowded receiving room. So Devonta Smith, Hollywood Brown, AJ Brown still there for now. I'm sure he will be out the door very, very soon. Wicks, Goda, Stowers there as well. There's a lot of competition for targets. He is very confident. A lot's been said about his attitude and his arrogance. I quite like my wide receivers being arrogant. He's got to believe he is the best wide receiver in the draft to pay off that draft cap. But did go a little bit lower than we were maybe thinking in round 1.
Potentially. I think for me, I always had him as a back end of the first prospect rather than a top 10 pick that I think most people were thinking. So yeah, I've always been a little bit lower than consensus. I'm fine with the landing spot. I think there's enough targets to go around. I'm not hugely concerned about that. My issue is that Makai Lemon is a player that does his best work between the numbers, and we're paired with a quarterback who literally cannot throw over the middle of the field. So, yeah, I mean, the Eagles are clearly trying to prove something because they've spent significant draft capital on Lemon and then Stowers, who both do their best work between the numbers. So maybe they're trying to turn Jalen Hurts into something else, but I'm a little bit nervous about the quarterback more than the target volume.
Next up, I want to have a look at Casey Concepcion. So one of the wide receivers who I enjoyed the most pre-draft to watch. Really versatile. So much that he can add to his game. A player who started off doing everything out the slot and then became more and more versatile as his college career progressed. Wanting to see him land in a situation where he can really be utilized well. Nice, solid, reliable QB. Who is that QB going to be? And then the Browns also went and picked up Denzel Boston shortly after as well. So it's going to be a tricky spot for Concepcion. Who do you think is going to be throwing the ball first? Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders, or will Deshaun Watson be massaging his rookie numbers next year?
Nice. I have no idea, and to be honest, I don't really care. I think they're all pretty awful. But look, Casey Concepcion's awesome. Like, he's such a good route run. I think he's going to create separation at will. It doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. I think they know where this ball's going to be going, and it's going to be going his way. I think he's going to be phenomenal. I'm excited about his rookie season, and hopefully in 2027, when they finally add a quarterback into the room that's competent, he can truly explode. I can't get enough of him, and I'm going to be drafting an awful lot of shares.
Next player up, I nearly didn't include, but what exciting! Rich, last year I asked Tom this in our day 1 review. Are the Jets going to be exciting this year? Because it feels like the Jets might be exciting.
Look, I've been a Jets fan now. We're heading into 27th season, and it's the hope that kills you. So yeah, look, I'm starting to feel that hope again, but look, I can be painful. Let's be positive, though. I think Geno Smith is far better than what he showed last year. I'm a big believer in his talent. I think he can be as good as he was in Seattle. So, yeah, there's enough options. There's enough weapons in this offense that it should at least be competent and up-tempo and hopefully exciting.
We'll come back on to the Jets shortly when we get to tight ends, but let's have a look at a few more wide receivers. So I've got all the round 3 wide receivers up there. Chris Bell, Caleb Douglas, both went in round 3. They pretty much are the Dolphins' wide receiver room. Let's not forget about Malik Washington. I don't know. I don't know if I can trust the Dolphins at all at this stage. So that's going to be an interesting one to see. I think they've got to be fantasy relevant purely on the basis that they've got to target someone. It may as well be one of those two. Or maybe we see that Malik Washington resurgence this year. Skylar Bell going round 4 to the Bills has been a lot spoken about as well over the last few days. So slots in alongside Moore and Shakir. I don't count Keon Coleman anymore. I think I'm well and truly done with thinking about Keon Coleman, especially from fantasy. And one of my personal gripes are undeserving players wearing the number 0 when they are not absolute superstars. Keon Coleman is the most undeserving player of the 0s jersey, but I'll do a whole separate short about the 0, I am sure, at some point. It's just an interesting prospect who's drawn much praise after just under 1,300 yards last year, 101 receptions, 13 touchdowns, only 13 games. Is he one to keep an eye on coming into the season? Where would you see his draft stock being?
Yeah, definitely. I like him as a prospect. I think anyone that can command targets at the volume he has, I'm always going to be intrigued by. I'm a little bit concerned that he could settle in behind Khalil Shakir, and I think he's probably the best wide receiver in Buffalo, a guy that's going to play primarily out of the slot. And then obviously you've got DJ Moore that they recently acquired. So if Skylar Bell can earn 3 wide receiver snaps, maybe he caps him as sort of a 60-70% snap share guy, given the amount of 2 tight ends that we're going to see from Buffalo. But I think there's talent here. I hope that if the Bills decide to not sign Khalil Shakir longer term, it could open up an avenue for Skylar Bell. I'm probably not getting too excited, though, draft capital-wise. I'd probably take him around mid to back end of the 3rd round of rookie draft. But he's definitely someone that if anyone drops early season, I'm going to be scooping in because I do want to see how he goes over the next year or two.
If you are still with us, please do consider signing up to the fantasy think tank Bestball Bonanza in support of the Beast of Memory Cafe. Quickly scroll back a few seconds, pause, scan that QR code and get yourself signed up. Fantastic group Bestball tournament. Competed for a lovely shiny championship ring as we enter our 4th year, and so supporting the Beast of Memory Cafe, who support those living with dementia and their carers just outside Nottingham over here in England. Let's move to tight ends then. And no surprise that Kenyon Sadiq went off first off the board. A player that I think the hype was in full flow post-draft because he was an absolute monster when it came to the combine. My biggest concern here, and maybe as a Jets fan, Rich, you can give me the answer. What exactly does this mean for all of my Mason Taylor shares that I think I have in almost every single Dynasty League I am in? It's not looking great for me, is it?
I wouldn't panic. I think that the talk is that the Jets are going to utilize more 12 personnel. I think that we're going to see a lot more multi-tight end sets. And I think that Kenyon Sadiq has got to earn his role. You know, this isn't an offense that he's just going to come in, play 100% of snaps, and Mason Taylor's got to step away. Mason Taylor showed competence last year. Mason Taylor showed an ability to line up in line. And, Kenyon Sadiq is a willing blocker. He's a physical guy, but he's not yet an NFL caliber blocking tight end. So I think that Mason Taylor's still going to have a role. If I had to bet my house on a player playing more snaps in the first 4 weeks of the year, I think I'd still lean Mason Taylor. I certainly wouldn't bet that by the end of the year, but I think that they're both, unfortunately for fantasy, probably going to cannibalize each other a little bit in 2026 before potentially one of them emerges longer term.
And that kind of just reinforces what I think a lot of people were feeling anyway, is that this isn't a tight end class like we've seen the last few years. We're unlikely to be seeing that true fantasy stud like we've been very lucky with Bowers. We saw Love and Warren show flashes, Warren especially last year. Sam Laporta, who absolutely knocked it out of the park, when we just got used to the fact that you can never rely on a rookie tight end. Maybe this year, as people potentially get carried away with Sadiq, we will revert back to the norm. Eli Stowers ending up in Philadelphia, Goat's potential successor. We've said about the crowded wide receiver room. We've said about the limitations of Hurts. He can't sustain everybody, can he? When it comes to fantasy relevance, Stowers, it is a decent situation, though, if you pick him up at a decent draft capital and hang on to him and maybe don't expect everything straight away this year.
Yeah, I think, look, he's a phenomenal player. How the Eagles are going to get him on the field, I'm slightly intrigued because obviously Dallas Goedert's there. Perhaps he can spend a year learning behind Goedert and then take over from Goedert like Goedert did over Ertz. I think he needs to learn how to block. That's a huge question mark for me. I think if he's going to play this year, it's going to be as a power slot, not as a tight end, quite frankly, because he's not anywhere near where he needs to be in that part of the game. So, as I said earlier, it does concern me that the Eagles have got added 2 pass catchers this offseason, both of which thrive in the middle of the field where Jalen Hurts basically just doesn't even look. So, yeah, I like Stowers. I'm intrigued at the landing spot. I think the Eagles will probably get the best out of him, but I do think we're looking 2027 and beyond rather than 2026.
Looking at a couple of other names then, I really enjoyed picking the wrong Rams tight end constantly in DFS last year. So it's nice to throw Max Clare into that mix as well.
Can I just jump in on Max Clare? Because I feel like the maybe I'm being harsh, but I feel like the dynasty fantasy world has kind of got a bit carried away here. Like, I'm a big Max Clare believer. I think he's a phenomenal prospect. I think he's really intriguing. For me as a prospect, he's in a tier with Stowers and Sadiq. And everybody's talking about this Rams tight end room as, oh, this is a horrendous landing spot. He's going to be tight end 5 and blah, blah, blah. Well, Colby Parkinson's a free agent at the end of this year. Tyler Higbee can be released now. He's just signed a new contract, but there's very little dead cap here. Davis Allen is a free agent at the end of the year. And Terrence Ferguson was a rookie last year. He didn't do a huge amount. So we could be looking back in 12 months' time, and Max Clare's the clear tight end 1 in Los Angeles on one of the best offenses in the league. So, yeah, okay, on paper, he's the tight end 5. But in 12 months' time, he could easily be the tight end 1. I think that we far too often with landing spot, we just pull up ESPN or our lads or whatever and go, oh, this player's ahead of him. He's rubbish. He's buried. It's a bad landing spot. Oh, there's no clear tight end. It's a good landing spot. Do some digging. Take a bit of a deeper look, because look at the contract situation. Look at what players are doing, and you'll realize actually Max Clare could be a diamond hiding in plain sight, quite frankly.
I think the best guarantee will be I'll continue my trend from last year. And if I pick any tight end other than Max Clare for DFS from the Rams, it's guaranteed to be Max Clare week in, week out at that point. So, yeah, so an interesting one. Terrence Ferguson was a player that I think for that those Rams-centric reasons, I was a little bit too high on last year. So maybe that soured me a little bit. Another situation where I landed spot, I'll be interested in your take on Sam Roush to Chicago in round 3, alongside Loveland and Komet. Loveland especially, we saw great things from in stages last year. How's Roush going to fit into this offense?
I think he's the 2027 replacement for Cole Kmet. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel again from the Bears. I feel like I've said that about most offenses. If you haven't been paying attention over the last 2 years, the NFL is going to pivot more and more into 12 and 13 personnel looks. I think that there's not going to be a huge amount of fantasy upside here. There's not going to be a huge fantasy ceiling, but he's probably going to be really annoying in that he'll score 5 to 8 touchdowns in a year. He'll have the odd spike week, but he's not going to see more than probably 20 to 30 targets across the season. And he's just going to be annoying for the Loveland owner, because you're going to look at his box score and go, well, they should be going to Loveland. But yeah, I think he's a really good blocker. I think he's a really interesting red zone weapon, but I don't see huge fantasy success, sadly.
Well, that is our whistle-stop tour through the entire NFL draft. A few minutes on a few of those key players there. I've got 2 more questions with you, Rich, before I let you go. And the first question is, can you tell us about the Fantasy Sanctuary Rookie Guide?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, it went live today, version 2. So, over 60 film, I think it's 63 this year, film-based player breakdowns, my rookie model, rankings, sleepers, overvalued players, everything you need to get ready for your rookie drafts. Available for £7 or $10 wherever you're from, or you can become a member of the Sanctuary and you get a free copy. Or if you want to come and join us at the Fantasy Social in August for some live drafts and a couple of beers in London, anyone who buys a ticket in the next 2 weeks also gets a free copy of the guide.
Amazing. So absolutely can recommend each and every one of those options, especially the Fantasy Social this summer. Very much looking forward to that. Final question then. I want to put you on the spot. Based on what we know so far, who is your early pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year 2026?
Oh, it's going to be boring, isn't it? It's Jeremiyah Love. Like, it feels like he's the odds-on favourite. If you want me to get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting, and think outside the box,
Garrett Nussmeier.
No, definitely not. I think maybe I'm going a bit beyond myself. I think Ted Hurst has got a really sneaky chance because I think he is going to play a lot more than people realise. I think he's going to step into that X role to replace Mike Evans. And I think if he could have 800 yards and sort of 8+ touchdowns, I think that could be enough to take it this year, because I think we're going to be slightly smaller numbers. And if Jeremiyah Love doesn't have that phenomenal season that we're all expecting, it could be a lesser year across the board.
After you'd mentioned Ted Hurst on our Sleeper Show pre-draft, when I saw him land in Tampa, I thought, yeah, that is a brilliant landing spot for him. So yeah, very much looking forward to seeing how that works out as well. Well, amazing. Thank you very much, Rich. Where can anyone find you and the Fantasy Sanctuary should they wish to consume more of your exceptional rookie-based content and everything else throughout the off-season as well?
I appreciate it. Always love coming on and chopping out with you. I'm at Dynasty Island on X, and then at the FF Sanctuary on X, and of course over on YouTube.
Amazing. So that is all from me. That is all from Rich. All that remains to be said is bada bing, bada bye, and we'll see you next time.